Jason, tell us about your business and what's limiting its growth right now.
Yeah, so Better Blueprint Realty is an investment real estate focused company. We have 4 verticals in the real estate space, 4 main business ventures. One is just centered around investing in real estate in general. We pick up fix and flips, multifamilies, Airbnbs, add value to them and sell those properties off or add to our portfolio. We have a luxury-based and investment-based real estate brokerage, which has a good amount of brokers coming in right now, but all of these are investment-focused real estate agents. Then we own a wholesaling business, which goes out and finds the distressed properties themselves and kind of feeds all of our arms of our business, which is extremely important, as you can imagine, with us investing in these properties ourselves. And then lastly, we have a mentorship program teaching people how to invest in real estate, and we've just launched that nationally. And so these are the 4 verticals that make up our investment-based business. And the biggest constraints for us right now is probably finding those C-suite level talent individuals where we can start converting our sales team to being a little more self-managing, high-performing individuals rather than consistently daily, plugging in and teaching them and helping them grow. I think converting to just a killer sales team overall, because there's a lot of nuance in real estate and strategy and the product knowledge, in addition to the ability to close as a sales professional. So I think marrying those 2 pieces of core knowledge and then having that C-suite executive with the vision to run it the way that we want to run it is where we are as a company right now, and is kind of our limiting growth factor.
And a lot of things to pick apart. But before we do, tell us about the goals. Tell us about, so these 4 lines of business, what was the revenue like last year? And what's like a revenue target 3 years from now?
Yeah, great question. I think we've doubled in revenue just about every single year. We're going to end up at about a net of 2 million this year. And we'll probably double next year as well. But we were about at 1.2 in net last year, and we're strategically focusing on the wholesale side of the business as well as the brokerage growth this year.
Okay, so this is net revenue, not gross revenue.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about gross revenue because it doesn't matter if it doesn't wind up staying with the company.
Oh, it's because when you sell a property, and you're earning commission, it doesn't matter what the property sold for. It's what you got as commission, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, well, to me personally, I just think sales revenue figures are a misleading stat. I could sell $20 million worth of product and only make $100,000, right? So right. I try to measure it off of gross net, which takes into account our sales commissions to our brokers and some of the cost of goods sold up front, because that's the figure that I've just chosen to run the business off of.
Okay. So 1.2 million last year, and the goal is to 2x it?
Yeah, we're at about 2.2 is what we're on track for this year right now.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a good goal to have. All right. So let's do a deep dive on the 4 lines of businesses. So the first one is investing, which is fix and flip. So are these single family, multifamily? Tell us about the asset class.
Yeah, I would say 80% of our product lineup is single family residential homes. These are your typical live-in 3, 4, 5 bedroom single family homes. We have done some special projects, like we've converted a triplex into 3 individual condominiums with a huge equity add, specifically from a legal change there, so we could sell those units separately. And then we, once a year we'll pick up an Airbnb or 2, in addition to some multifamily projects. So we're strategically 1 or 2 years down the line. We have everything in place. We've built a private equity firm to go after 30, 40 lot new construction development projects. Like that's the next phase for us on the development side. That's just on pause until the market kind of gives us the green light signals we want to see to ensure success there. But for the single family flips is where most of our business is right now. And those are purchased typically between $400,000 and $800,000. And they're sold typically between $900,000 and $1.5 million.
Okay. So this is just for the fix and flip line of business, correct?
Correct.
You said you're doing some potential development work in the future? So that's like buying land, subdividing, and putting homes on it?
Yes, and we're trying to focus strategically on land where it's already quote unquote shovel ready. It's already been subdivided. It's been through the annexation and permitting process with the city, because that can be long and arduous.
Mm,
We're okay putting in the utilities and the actual dirt work and the electrical and the plumbing ourselves, but we have a pretty aggressive investment plan with the individuals that invest in our fund. And so we want to get them cash back within 18 to 24 months, not
mm.
3 to 6 years. So I think that's what really differentiates us in that space is a velocity of capital and getting them a return on their funds quickly. So we are targeting a little closer to shovel ready type projects.
You meant entitlement, not annexation,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay. So you want properties that are already, as you said, shovel ready. And you said it's a fund. Is it like five? What is it called? 506C,
It's
506B,
504. Yeah, it's a
504.
504. Yeah.
Is that the one where you can only raise capital through accredited investors?
You can raise through both. You
Okay,
can raise through both in this structure.
I see. And it's you've already started the raise, and you haven't deployed the capital yet.
We've set up the fund. We've identified multiple people for the raise that have committed. We've got our contractor teams in place and we've got our sales teams in place. So these are individuals that have sold entire subdivisions before. They already work within our brokerage. We have kind of the key elements set up. We had offered on a few parcels previously, but it was around the time where, at least in our market, new construction builders were starting to give like $50,000 in concessions to rate buy down. And so just where the market was headed right there, we want the market to be going in a positive direction if we're going to take on a 3-year project. But,
Right.
we haven't done any of these projects yet. This is off in the future. Our main business is the fix and flips. This is something that, as we grow as investors, we want to take on one project that could net us $5 to $7 million rather than trying to flip 15 to 20 projects a year.
Right. And what markets are you targeting?
This is all Colorado.
Oh, this is Colorado. Okay. Yeah. So we buy and sell vacant land all over the U.S. We usually do smaller value deals. But I know some people in our network who do subdivision deals. So that's the reason I was asking. But they're mostly in Texas, not in Colorado. Okay, so you have the commitment from all these private investors. How does the structure look like? Because I recently had a guest on who was talking about a similar structure, and he's like an expert in setting up these funds, and he would give out like 10% to his investor. So he would divvy it up in 3 classes: class A, class B, class C shares, and it was like a hybrid fund, both like debt and equity. And he would give out 8%, 10%. No, actually, it was 6%, 8%, or 10%, or was it 7, 8, 10%? So 10 was his max percentage. What kind of percentages do you give out to your investors, and how do you attract capital from private individuals?
We've tried to mirror our fix and flip structure because it's worked so well. We've had really, really, really good success attracting private money for fix and flips, meaning we'll still use hard money for a lot of those projects, but we secure the down payment through private investors. So if we need 200 grand to do a deal, we'll secure that through private investors and then use that to do a hard money loan, which would cover the other 800 grand or whatever required to do the deal. But that's a 4 to 6 month return. That's like 15%. And our philosophy there is, okay, if you're going to do 4 months at 15% and you keep that rolling with us, that's like 52% a year. Like, it's absurd.
Mm,
That structure crushes just about any other type of structure out there. And we would typically be dealing with people that, work or would otherwise be investing in like mutual funds or something like that, right? So that is a really attractive structure. We have an extremely high close rate, and we structure it specifically that way because I don't want to argue over a couple percent here and there. I'd rather just put the money to work and everybody wins. And so I know a lot of people could raise at 8% and 10%, and that's competitive in the space. But again, I'd much rather just be able to attract larger pools of investors and roll. And so that's why we're structuring it very similarly on the fund side of things. We're at about 12%, 12 to 15%. And we're structuring it to where, again, that is the leverage for the build portion. And when we have a relationship with a lender out here that would lend specifically on LTV and not LTC. And so they'll lend on finished appraised value rather than loan to cost, which in layman terms means that if they're lending 70% of finished appraised value, it cuts our cash requirements out of pocket down to only needing about a third of what we would normally need to do a project like this. So we're trying to just set it up to be as economic as possible for us to get started in this space. We're not a big national home builder. We're stair stepping our investment portfolio, and without going and raising 30 mil, we want to create a structure that allows everybody to succeed. So we're probably in the $5 to $7 million raise requirement to do a project like this.
So this is once again, so this is for fix or flip, or this is just for the subdivision play that you're about to do in the near future?
It's a mirrored structure. This is for the subdivision play. It's the same structure almost as our fix and flip. The fix and flips are just a 4-month period of time. The subdivision play is an 18-month period of time.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I just wanted to understand this with an example. So say you're buying a house that clearly, it's a fixer upper and needs a lot of work. Say the value is $500,000. So for the down payment, so 20% of 500,000, so 100K, you are going out to private investors and basically telling them, well, we're going to give you 15% return for the next four months or so, right?
Yeah, it's actually significantly less than 20%. We have lending partners that'll give us 10% requirements or even 0% requirements, and they'll fund the whole thing. But let's say our typical lender is funding 90-90, so 90% of the purchase price, 90% of all the construction and remodel costs. So we got to come up with 10% across the board. And so that 10% is what we're fundraising for on the fix and flip side, right? So if in Colorado, very typical project, like you said, you're purchasing at $500,000, you're putting $180,000 into the remodel, and you're selling the project at $975,000. We would raise the 10% down, and we would offer them a 15% rate of return. And that would typically be on like a short-term loan with a promissory note and a personal guarantee.
Okay. And usually, but that's, you said in 4 months, you gotta flip the house. So you have to finish the construction, get it market ready, and then sell all within 4 months. Isn't that like a tight deadline?
I think it depends on the scope. Like this is what we're experts in, right? So depending on the scope of the project, you might be at 2 months and you might be at 8 months. So, usually we have a project in mind for a particular investor. And so while it's not tied or they're not in second lien position on a particular project, we're setting expectations based on scope. And so I would say our average timeline is between 4 and 6 months. Construction timeline is between 8 and 12 weeks for 90% of our projects. And then we're at a 30 to 60 day sale time.
This is in any market, or usually it's like when the market is hot?
Well, when it's hot, obviously we're selling them much quicker.
Okay. So this is like an average timeline for an average market.
I think for right now, what we're seeing an average timeline is between 4 and 6 months, depending on scope. If you're doing a full remodel where you're tearing walls out, we've got square footage we need to finish, we have to go through a full permitting process with the city. That's probably our biggest delay. We might instead be at like an 8 to 10 month timeline. But again, it's project dependent.
Hmm. What happens when something like an outlier event happens and you're not able to sell within 4 to 6 months?
Well, so when we analyze our projects, and I think this is where most fix and flippers start to kind of get things wrong. Like even in our market, which is a pretty high priced market, I think the average home price in Denver right now we've seen is like around $710,000. The average fix and flipper in a lot of cases are just trying to make $20, $30, $50,000. And that is a terribly small percentage or margin on these projects. And so when we're analyzing our deals, our special sauce, if you will, right? What we feel like we do extremely well. My background is engineering. So we kind of nerd out on the math of this is underwriting these properties and having very specific like go, no go criteria where we say, hey, listen, regardless of what market you're in, we need to protect ourselves against downside, right? Like any smart, wise investor, business owner is going to say, hey, what happens in worst case scenario? Like, let's not get dreamy. Let's not get too optimistic. Yeah, it sounds really cool when we say, hey, we can make, and we're averaging $120,000 net profit per deal right now. But like you just asked, what happens in worst case scenario? Well, when we underwrite, we take a look at three things. We say, hey, listen, what's the pain in the butt to benefit ratio? Like, what's our ROI? Cash out of pocket versus net profit. And that has to meet a minimum for us to take on the risk and the time and the effort and the energy. The second thing is absolute worst case scenario, which means, hey, listen, if I look at the last 25 years of data in my market specifically, and Zillow's awesome for this, they have publicly available data for every single month for the last 25 years, 26 years since the year 2000. If I graph that out, what does the worst case scenario look like? And surprisingly, it wasn't 2007, 8, 9, and 10 in Denver in particular. It was in 2022. We saw a peak in 2022 to a trough in December of 2022 of about 15% shift in market value. And so we averaged that out to in an 8-month period of time. So that's about 2% drop per month. And if you were to hold on to a fix and flip during that period of time for 8 months, I mean, 15% of 800 grand is what? Like 150,000 bucks. Like it's a lot of money. So how do you remain profitable in that situation? Oh, by the way, that's not worst case scenario. That is 1/3 of worst case scenario is, hey, if the market's shifting at that rate, 2% per month, if you go over on your construction budget by say 10%, and if you also go over on your timeline by 2-3 months, what happens when all three things there hit at the exact same time? Can you still remain profitable? So when we underwrite these deals, we keep that specific criteria in mind pretty strongly, and we put a very conservative timeline on this of 6, 8, 10 months, so that even if all those things hit, are we at least breaking even, right? And that's how we're trying to risk mitigate against poor markets or contractor, issues or permitting delays, etc. Our very last criteria is purely a function of percentage of ARV. So if it's an exit strategy consideration, hey, if we had to hold on to this thing and rent it as a absolute worst case scenario, hold on to it because it's not selling or something's happening, or maybe we want to keep it as a long-term rental. Do we have the equity in the deal to do it? And so we're buying typically at 79% of ARV minus construction costs. Really, really, really hard to buy in Colorado at 65, 70% of ARV minus construction costs, just because of how high priced our market is. But that's just going to ensure that, hey, we don't have to bring $100,000 to the table to close these deals if we had to refinance. Maybe we got to bring 5 or 10, but that's a lot more palatable than the other options.
Right. So the goal is to flip and not hold it as a rental, right?
Absolutely. The goal is to be in and out in 4, 6, 7 months. And again, on average, we're making about $120,000 net profit per deal that we're taking on right now.
Hmm. Why not hold it as a long-term rental? Because then you can take advantage, you don't have to pay taxes. You can take up advantage of the appreciation and depreciation on the taxes and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I love the other methods of income through real estate. I love those other options. In Colorado, I think we just have to understand like each market is different, right? North Carolina, Indiana, Buffalo, New York, Tennessee, like those are cash flow markets where the 1% rule is pretty doable and you are going to make, a decent amount of cash flow. Colorado is more like a mini California where we're a high appreciation market, but our cap rates are really not good at all. So we're at like a 4.5 to 5.5% cap rate at most of the single family real estate in Colorado. Very, very challenging to cash flow single family homes here. You can do it if you're talking about inexpensive 4-bedroom new construction, and doing more of like a nomad method. But when you're talking about a fix and flip where your finished value or your appraised value is going to be 800,000 to 1.2 million, the pity payments on that are just so high that it's very challenging to cash flow as a long-term rental. You can do that. You can BRRRR in Colorado. You just have to set it up as a short-term rental as your exit. We are still a tourist state, right? So that supercharges your cash flow enough to where you can make $1,000, $2,000 in net cash flow afterwards.
Right. The 90% of loan that the is that coming from the bank or like local banks, national banks? Where is that coming from?
So the 90% of purchase and of construction is coming from hard money lenders, the very specific class of lending based on fix and flips. This is short-term loans that are 6, 9, 12-month loans. They're, designed for rehab projects. And so you can have monster foundation damage, roof issues, all these things. You cannot use them as a primary residence, right? But they're great because they're pretty flexible in their underwriting. Like I always tell people, like you've got your most conservative, which is your Fannie and Freddie Mac and your mortgage insured products, or sorry, government insured mortgages. Then you've got your DSCR products, which are more like credit unions. And these are non-QM mortgages, which are now a little looser because, hey, listen, they have their own underwriting capabilities, but they still have to, they're beholden to their investors and whatever they set as their guidelines. And then you kind of start moving into the Wild West a little bit more, which is hard money loans, which certainly are not government insured. And they're just raising private money themselves, whether it's Wall Street money or their own pool of money or whatever that looks like. But they set their own underwriting criteria, right? So if they want to lend at 90%, they can. It is specifically for non-owner occupied, investment-based, fix and flip loans. And the beautiful part about those, this is where we get super competitive in this marketplace and are able to pick up really steep deals, meaning we can get them at really discounted prices, is they can close in 48 hours to 14 days. So now we're talking about like a cash offer within a week to 10 days that helps solve some of these homeowners' problems very quickly. And now if you combine that with the relationship you built and your sales skill, now we're talking about an $80,000, $120,000, $200,000 discount away from where they'd like to be. Because we've been able to solve all of these problems to get something which now fits our flipping criteria, right?
How much is the interest like on these hard money loans? I'm guessing you're paying a premium.
For sure. It's expensive. It costs money and debt is always a risk, right? So over time, if you have the ability to not take on these loans or take on smaller and smaller LTCs here, where now we're only using them for 60% of the loan or 50% of the loan, I think that's always valuable because it's expensive. But our partnerships, again, we've got very specific relationships. We pair them with our students in our mentorship program, and they get direct access to this capital, are usually between 9% for the 90% LTVs. So we'll get 9% in 1 point, Or if we have specific lenders that'll fund 100% of everything, those are more at like 12.99%. So it is, a very high interest rate when you talk about traditional mortgages, but 9% right now is 2 points above like the 7% market average right now. So it's definitely doable. And if you're
Mm.
talking about, hey, I've got 70, 80 grand of capital and it's going to allow me to make 100 grand, I think that 9% interest rate is absolutely worth it so long as you're risk mitigating appropriately.
What is the 1 point? You said 9% and 1 point?
Yeah, it's 1 point up front as like a loan origination fee.
Oh, I see. Okay. Is that your only money out of pocket?
That is. Yes, sir. Yeah. So you basically just have the 10% down and the loan fee. And then you typically need to have money in reserve sitting there to cover the monthly, mortgage cost of this thing. But yes, that's the only money out of pocket. And again, if it's a great deal and everything meets the lender's criteria, like you're still at 70% of after repair value without putting any money down, there are some lenders that you have no money out of pocket, zero.
Mm.
You still got to have it sitting there in reserve.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have a net worth of zero and it just works. But this is why I think this strategy, fix and flipping in particular, is really powerful to get somebody started in real estate, because now we're talking about building cash position extremely quickly. You can go from having 20, 30 grand in the bank, raise a little bit of private money, and you can make $400,000 a year flipping properties. And now we've got cash position to actually part with and hold on to long-term cash flowing properties. But most people don't have that cash to part with in the beginning. If
Yeah.
they were to take that money and stick it in a long-term rental, it's going to take them 3 years to do anything with that money, right?
Yeah. It does seem risky for a beginner, because you're paying like 9% on the hard money loans, and then you're paying 12 to 15% for the down payment, and then you're paying 1 point in the origination, and then I'm guessing these payments start monthly, right? Or is it like interest only for the first few months?
Hard money is always interest only.
Okay.
And the 15% investor return gets paid on a realization event, quote unquote, meaning when you sell or refinance the property.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So the payments are not due right away, and you're just making interest only payments and 1 point, and then you're also, what about the actual construction costs? That's covered in the hard money loans?
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you really have to deliver now. Essentially, you promise bunch of money to investors, and now, as you said, your special sauce is to actually finding these contractors to do a good job and do it fast, so you can resell, and then everyone gets paid, right? That's where the special sauce lies, right?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy is to exit, right? Is to sell,
Right.
and have that net profit on the back end. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but so let's dive deeper into that. So how are you finding these contractors? I'm guessing they are inexpensive, right? Because we have to control our costs, and they have to do a good job.
Yeah, I think there's an expectation of like, hey, we have to be quick and we have to hit our target quality, right? We don't need to be custom, like that's not going to be the case. But we need to hit quality enough to where we're not going to raise eyebrows on the resale. We're going to do a good job. Things are going to function well. Things are going to look good. So we have to do our due diligence and work up front in terms of the design and putting together a proper package that's going to work well. But from a contractor perspective, we need people that are honest and transparent and can work with us with systems, right? And so they can't just go off on their own and manage it in their own way, in their own capacity, because we can't pay 30% margins. Like there's no way. And a contractor that comes into a primary residence individual, right? Like you're living in this home, you hire a contractor to do your roof. They're going to charge you $15,000 to do that roof. Whereas I know for a fact I can get it done for $6,000 with our resources because we know the costs and we're doing this every day, right? So I think, part of any business is finding your competitive advantage, finding, your unfair advantage. Like where are your margins? And part of what we need to be successful in fix and flips is finding contractors that will work quickly with us in our systems at cost effective pricing. And in return, we have a ton of value that we offer these contractors. But yes, we can't be paying 30% margins across the board here.
What's the value in return?
I think there's a lot of value in return. If we look at what a typical remodel contractor's business looks like, they're concerned about finding their next job continuously, right? Like, hey, I got to constantly prospect new leads and get referrals because their jobs are typically shorter. They're like doing a deck and a siding job. They're doing one bathroom remodel. They're doing a basement build out. Maybe they're just doing tile on a few bathrooms. So those are very short 2-3 day projects, maybe a week long project. And so they're constantly trying to find new business. And there's a lot of contractors that can't keep themselves busy. I've got buddies that, when they couldn't keep themselves busy, they're based in Colorado, but they're trying to keep their families fed. So they went to Nebraska to work and they went to Florida to work just to keep themselves busy. So I think number one is, hey, listen, we have long, predictable scopes of work. Like these are 3, 4, 5 month projects. And, this is a larger project than you would typically be dealing with. So you don't have to constantly be hunting down new business. Again, we do 15 to 20 projects a year, but even a newbie can with integrity say, hey, my intent is to do this in terms of volume. And then you have to have a trial period to make sure you guys work well together. You don't have personality conflicts. You can continue to improve. So we can start to now offer volume if things go well as well. So we can start being, 3-4 month long projects. We have consistent volume through here. Oh, by the way, you don't have to deal with homeowners that have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to construction and are a huge pain in the butt to deal with. Man, I've heard crazy stories from some of my crews when they dealt with homeowners, like people flashing them in their own home, like just craziness. So
Right.
it's nice to work on these types of projects because they're vacant. It's kind of like a new construction environment where, hey, you can show up when is convenient for you, like 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. Like, I don't care when you show up, so long as the job gets done. My favorite contractor of all time is my plumber. And I swear, he only works from 5 to 11 at night, but he gets it done on time, every time, on budget, every time. And so I think there's a lot of value that we can offer contractors. And you as a business owner, like when you're talking to the lender, when you're talking to the contractor, when you're talking to investors, like you're going to present yourself different in each scenario. And you have to have that unique value proposition to pitch to each of those entities, because you got to sell yourself and you've got to recruit good partners in this space.
How are you finding these deals? I'm guessing so you have these existing relationship with contractors that helps you, do your unique value add and get everything done on time and under budget. But how are you finding these I'm guessing these are all off market deals, right?
It's actually a mix. We probably do about 50% on market, 50% off market. You'd be really surprised, again, if you're doing your analysis well and you've got your sales hat on and you can build value and solve problems creatively, how many on market properties might be asking 600 and you get them to sell for 480, right? So like we make about 20 to 25 offers a week on market. And that's one lead source. We probably have about 10 different lead sources, right? A lot of them being off market. But good deals, like it's so frustrating. Good deals can be found on market. So I see investors all the time say, I only buy off market. And yeah, on market's competitive and everybody can see it. But again, if you're a professional and you can work it, like, and you can provide value, you can definitely find good deals there. But to answer your question, this was one of our major bottlenecks, especially as you start flipping at scale. you need good deal flow. And, the first free steps that you take are, hey, I'm going to look at wholesalers. I'm going to look at real estate agents and call my real estate agents in this area and see who can provide me deals. I'm going to look at on market deals. I'm going to keep sticky notes with me. And when I drive around to different neighborhoods, just during my regular day or job or whatever, if I see something, I'm going to sticky note it and have that person call me and see if I can buy that property from them. Right. So those are 4 very easy, very scalable, very free methods to find properties. But that wasn't enough when we start looking at this at scale, not just for us, but for our students and our mentees. We had to build this other wholesale business to go out and find those properties off market consistently. Right. Because getting deals at these types of margins is not necessarily easy. It's definitely doable. You can do it. But we have students come to us all the time and they're like, well, I was going to make 40 or 50K on this deal and it went away. And it's like, well, you guys need to be shooting for $150,000 so you have the appropriate factor of safety in your margin. And they're like, well, I just can't find deals that make that money. So that's where kind of our wholesale business comes into play.
Do you ever do like direct mail or like Facebook ads or PPC?
100%. Yeah. So right now, our wholesale business has a bunch of methods of leads. One is agents. Like we will build an army of agents working on our behalf, and we offer them a unique value proposition. But we do PPC marketing. We create our own ads for that. We run that. We've done it through Meta specifically for a while, and now we're running it through Google and YouTube. We have our own outbound text SMS system with AI built in, and we've got a VA built into that process as well. But we're sending about 60 to 70,000 text messages a month to targeted zip codes to generate conversations and seller leads. And then we work a lot of probate leads, and we kind of go down the list, from there.
Have you seen any like legal issues on the texting side?
No, I think we've set ourselves up well from that side. We're not offering to provide a service. We're offering to buy the property, right? And that's a legal distinction right there. That's very key. It's pretty critical. There's some case law and examples behind that and how that's played out in court. And then you do have to have very specific processes as you go about doing that type of an activity, right? You need to have opt-out language. You need to have the do not disturb your D&D enabled when they do put in that opt-out language. You need to identify yourself. You can't harass individuals. There is a lot to remain compliant in that, sector. But there's definitely good ways of doing it.
You mentioned unique value proposition for realtors and agents. Like, what are those?
Yeah, again, I think every person you talk to, we've got to recruit at a high level. We want good talent. Why do they want to work with you? Like, why are you worth their time? And I think with agents in particular, like they get, at least in our marketplace, they get texts all the time from wholesalers being like, hey, I'm an investor. Do you have any, fixer upper properties that are a challenge for you? And we get agents all the time that tell us like, man, these are so annoying. I get 10 of these a day. And they want to write you off. So how do you sit in there and sit in the driver's seat and direct the conversation around that value proposition to build good partners and have people actively hunting for this? Not just, hey, listen, when I come across something, I'll send it your way. That's very non-committal and maybe you'll get one a year from that individual. No, I want to sit down once a week with you and see what you're doing to bring leads in and what deals are kind of percolating in your system. So when we look at value proposition as an agent, we're a brokerage. We understand agents very, very well. We understand what challenges they have, what they're looking to accomplish, what are the niche of agents that we're going to reach out to that we're going to be successful with. And it's probably agents doing between 5 and 15 deals a year. The agents that are doing 30 to 40 deals a year, those are agents that have a system, they're crushing it, they understand their marketing, they understand their bandwidth constraints, they have a team, they're going to stick to that. They're not going to take a major distraction over here to come, try to build a whole new lead generation system to help us out, right? So probably not our ideal client profile when we're talking about recruiting agents. But the 5 to 15 range, These are people that are looking for more deals, haven't quite put the puzzle pieces together yet, looking for ways to have built-in buyers, etc. And so we approach them from, hey, we want you to be our buyer's agent, but we want to make this super easy for you. We don't want you guys to get bogged down with negotiating all these deals and dealing with the paperwork. And frankly, we don't want them in the middle of the transaction because we're experts at negotiating with the seller. Like, we know our business, we know what problems we can solve, we know all the tools in our toolbox. And we found that agents that insert themselves in that agent role in the middle of it will lose deals at a higher clip than we will, or don't have the initiative that we would, because we have a lot of urgency on our side. So when we look at what an agent is trying to accomplish and achieve, we know, hey, they want more deals. They want to make $100,000 a year. They want consistent, non-emotional buyers. How many buyers agents are sick of dealing with, the typical buyer that they have to drive to 30 properties before they make this decision. And they're just so emotionally up and down in the process that activity hurts their scalability. Like, how do you drive somebody to 20 properties and scale, right? Like, that's really challenging. So we offer a very non-emotional, repeatable buyer who has a a fund set up and can buy at scale. And for us in particular, we have so many other value propositions, meaning we have the brokerage, we have our mentorship program, we fix and flip. So we have all of these pieces of credibility to separate ourselves from the traditional wholesaler. But I think at its face value, like, hey, Mr. Agent, come be our buyer's agent. We will pay you a flat $10,000 fee as a finder's fee for any distressed properties that you bring us that close. And you don't have to insert yourself. You don't have to do anything. Just bring us the lead. We'll close it. We'll do everything, right? So you can scale this activity by just bringing us more leads. And it's not going to bog you down on the rest of your business. You make $10,000 a property. We'll buy as many as you can throw at us, and we'll get these things closed. And so when an agent can see a pathway to like making repeatable, consistent income through you, we feel like they're able to actually work on our behalves pretty hard.
This 10% fee, you paying them on the buy side or when the property sells?
It's a $10K flat, and we're paying them when we close on the purchase of that property, right? And we might buy it ourselves. We may wholesale it to a student in our mentorship program because they get exclusive 48 hours access to our deals, or we may push it to our network of investors outside of that. But they're getting paid right away at closing through title.
Right. But this could also be a fix and flip that you can take on yourself, right?
100%. 100%. And if we don't take it on, we double close everything. So we are the end buyers in every situation. But again, yes, this is something that we could take on as a fix and flip for ourselves. And those have been some of our best deals, honestly.
Right. Okay. So what's the decision tree look like? Do you start with, okay, is this like a fixer upper that we can do ourselves and use our funders? And then you go to, all right, maybe not enough meat on the bone. We'll try to wholesale to our students. Like, tell us the decision tree.
Well, first and foremost, like our value and integrity behind our company is like, hey, we need to do right by the sellers that we gave our word to that we're going to close this transaction. And we need to do right by our students who have joined us for the benefit of their future and their net worth. And so we're beholden to our students and our mentees to try to get them deal flow as much as possible because we want to see them succeed. We also have, bandwidth constraints on our side as well as a fix and flip organization. Like, I don't want to take on more than 6 or 7 projects at a time right now because it requires a lot of overhead to manage that process, right? So we'll first kind of push it into our students and into our program because we want that to succeed. And that has a multiplicative effect across all of our businesses when our mentorship program is doing well. But we'll push it there first. If it's a really good deal, like, we'll cherry pick great deals for our own business as well. And then, if it's not quite the right fit for a student, because we teach people how to flip properties in very, very specific ways. And we take on bigger projects than I think most flippers would. Like most fix
Hmm.
and flippers are cosmetic updates in and out in 6 weeks. Don't like a lot of bigger projects or a lot of design work or something that intimidates them or permitting issues. So I think there's a lot of investment deals that maybe aren't good for us, but they're perfect fits for somebody else. And I'm not going to, you know, tell somebody else how to run their business. So there's plenty of properties that are long-term rentals or short-term rentals or turnkey properties or seller finance deals or cosmetic fix and flips or new builds, because we can do new builds and we have, but not a lot of our students are doing new builds. So they might be like a scrape situation where you're knocking down the home and building in its place. And we'll push those out to kind of our investor relationships across
Hmm.
the state and the country. Yeah.
Does it ever raise conflict of interest? Because like if I'm a student, I'll be like, well, Jason is clearly going to take the best deals and I'm only going to be getting the rejects. Does it ever like feel that way for the students, and how do you mitigate this?
Well, I think it's a great question, right? Because we have to be very careful in these situations and we have to have our students' best interests in mind. And to answer your question, like our wholesale business has to generate volume, period. And I'm not always going to be in a position to take on properties. As a matter of fact, I've strategically stopped taking on flips because I want to hold out for these larger development opportunities and I want to prioritize our students. So no, we've got students that are taking the best deals right now. And if I have capacity, yeah, I'll take on a deal or two or three here, right? But these other businesses are growing so rapidly right now, and they have such lower overhead requirements that I'd rather prioritize those. And again, our student success is the priority. So we're not at capacity to handle all the volume that the wholesale business puts out. There's no way. And so they're getting better deals a lot of the times than I am, because I just don't have the timing opening up to take on some of those deals.
Can you explain? You mentioned there's less overhead in other businesses. You said, can you explain that?
Yep. That mentorship program is very little overhead, right? It's time constrained in terms of me teaching these individuals and in terms of our marketing dollars. That's a marketing in, profit out, right? Because that's a national program that requires a good amount of marketing to get students through the funnel and into our program. But that's very turn on, turn off, right?
Hmm.
The wholesaling business has a significant amount of overhead, but that's based around lead generation and cash available for earnest money and those sorts of things. And everything else is based on cost of goods sold. So most of the money that comes out of the wholesaling business is commissions paid to employees, but it is 100% commission based. So it's lower risk from that perspective. So again,
Hmm.
very low stagnant overhead other than marketing dollars, and marketing has a knob. I can turn it on and off.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas if you're running 20 fix and flips at a time, they do have a high overhead because you have, these hard money loans that are attached to them, right? So there is a time constraint attached to them in terms of 4 to 6 months to complete. And there's an overhead, like there's a mandatory overhead that's not going to go away. That is also attached to that property. So you just want to be smart and strategic as you take on those projects, I think, as any prudent investor would. And these other businesses don't have the same mandatory requirements, that are attached to those things.
Right. Is that the reason you're like kind of like transitioning away or diversifying your lines of businesses?
Again, I think they're all multiplicative, right? Like we have these four verticals, they all play well together. Like the brokerage allows us to list our students' properties at discounted rates, or sell our own properties without any real cost. It also, the more agents that we bring on, the more pocket listings we're going to get and the more connections we're going to build. And everybody can kind of work along the same side. The wholesaling business has to be there to feed everything else. But yeah, I mean, I think as you look at different markets, as you look at diversifying your income, like my goal when I first got into this, first got into it year one was, hey, we're going to flip 4 properties a year. And I'm not going to live on my flipping income. I'm going to live on my real estate income and my wholesale income. So the cash flow came from the shorter, you know, turn deals, because wholesale deals will sell in 2 weeks. You'll get income in that from in 2 or 3 weeks. And then the net worth growth and the splash cash, the money that we can continue to reinvest, is going to come from these fix and flips, which are really high net margin deals, but they're going to pay you once every 4 to 6 to 10 months, right? Like it's not a
Mm,
consistent monthly thing. So even like the students that come through our program, like I always recommend that they keep their W-2 job, one, until they figure out that this is right for them, and two, make sure that they have the skills to accomplish this, but really so that they're never financially pressured to make poor decisions. Like, hey, I have my W-2, that's a stable income, I can live off of that. Therefore, I'm not going to make a poor financial decision on this fix and flip if I ever get squeezed or I hold on to it longer than I anticipate or something like that. Right. So, usually these can be done in like 7 hours a week on the side after it's kicked off. The first 2 or 3 weeks, design, everything else like that is a little bit of a bigger lift from a time constraint perspective. But it fits in really nicely to a skill set that's being built on the side, until you really get the momentum rolling here and are successful there.
right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're essentially saying it's a lumpy revenue, right? For 4 months, you might not see anything, and then you see like $200,000. And you're trying to like diversify the income portfolio where you have these lumpy revenue coming in, but also like a monthly recurring coming in through like an education style business. So that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
do you tell me, like, have you ever lost money on a deal, like on a fix and flip?
Yes. We've lost money on one project. And it was a project that happened in the middle of 2022, when rates were, going through the roof. We went from like a 3% rate to an 8% rate. And so our market value was tanking pretty rapidly. And these are like, the lessons that we learn and the lumps that we take. So other people don't have to, but that's where that criteria of 2% per month for 8 months kind of came from. Was, we took on a project in 2022 and it lost, I don't know, $80,000 in value over the time that we held that property, just from the market fluctuation. Um, really the reason that we lost money had nothing to do with that. The reason that we lost money was, because we analyzed it improperly. We had a very, 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 very specific pocket in a specific neighborhood that was separated as a subdivision. And everywhere I looked, all around that was A grade neighborhoods, with A grade schools, the best school district in all of Denver Metro. And I failed to identify, that pocket subdivision as being something different. And so the after repair value was probably about 120K off of where it should have been. So that was the major reason why, we weren't super successful on that project. The other one was we had a contractor that was doing 5 of our projects, and he was just overloaded. He took on 20 projects in total between us and other investors. He wasn't able to meet his deadlines. He was kind of shuffling money around. And so we had to move him off of our project and bring in a new contractor midway through, which is always never the best solution. Like it's always going to cost you some amount of money to do that. So between those things, that was kind of where we went wrong. We were still able to sell it, and we had a structure then with an investor where it wasn't a short-term loan. It was a joint venture agreement. So there's 2 ways we structure it. We do have a short-term loan set up where it's a guaranteed rate of return with a promissory note and a personal guarantee. And then we have a joint venture agreement where, hey, listen, you're going to make 20% of the net profit, right? And if it makes money, you're going to make potentially a lot more than you would in this short-term loan structure. But if it loses money, like your capital's at risk, right? Now in that situation, we paid our investor. That's, that's what we do.
So you personally took the loss?
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm. What was the dollar amount?
It's about 80 grand.
80,000. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm guessing you learned a lot of lessons. As you said, you learn from it and then you incorporate those lessons going forward, right?
Oh, 1,000%. Like I said, we hadn't lost money on a project till then. We haven't lost money on a project since then. And it completely changed how we analyze deals. It completely changed how we comp properties and how we evaluate subdivisions and dividing roads, and architectural styles and school zones now get brought into this. And so how we evaluate deals changes. But I think from an integrity standpoint, like if you want to last in this business, even if we weren't obligated to pay that individual, but we did, and we want to continue to do business with people like that. So I think, from an integrity standpoint, it just takes a little bit more work and a little bit more pain management to make sure that your partners are still happy.
So the partner got his capital back, but he didn't make any money, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think you can have those honest conversations of like, hey, we took it on the head on this project. I'm going to pay you your initial investment, but there's no way I can pay you a profit on top of that. Like, I hope you understand that.
Yeah. It essentially was like an $80,000 lesson for you, and then you learned from it, and then you made much more money over the long term. You mentioned you have this national campaign going for your mentorship business. Tell me about that. What does that mean, national campaign?
Yeah, when my first year in real estate was a roller coaster, right? Like, I started in real estate because I wanted to learn how to invest and not retire when I was 75 and have some ownership over my skill set and my income, like as a husband and as a father. Like, I want to provide for my family no matter what my W-2 is doing. So I was an engineer. I made 110 grand a year. We were saving $400 a month. I was like, that's going to take me 30 years to do that. Right. How do I do it in 10? How do I have like real ownership over this? And, if I get fired, et cetera, like it's not going to matter. Like, this is going to be something I can always rely on. I jumped into real estate in that respect, and we made like 400 grand our first year doing real estate between fix and flips, wholesaling a few properties, and just getting my real estate license and our primary residence. We bought strategically in a nomad method and built up a ton of equity. So it radically changed my life and our ability to invest and save and spend time with family and travel. And so I really just wanted to give back, and I wanted to, like, I very, very passionately believe entrepreneurship, side hustles are the new retirement method. I think that it's very challenging to say with integrity that saving in a 30-year mutual fund like we did, over the last 20, 30 years is really the path forwards now. Like, I think you need to be a millionaire to retire comfortably nowadays. And that's not out of like a, materialistic BS like answer. I legitimately think that's what you need to have set aside to be comfortable and not at risk in today's world. And so we started teaching this mentorship program to help other people learn how to fix and flip and have similar success. Even if it was like, you don't have to go crazy like me. You don't have to try to do 20 a year. Like, that's a lot of work and it's a lot of hair pulling, right? But even if you just do 1 a year, 2 a year, 3 a year at 100 grand a piece, does that not replace your income? Does that not, like, there was a year I did 3 fix and flips and I wholesaled a little bit, and I worked 6 months that year, and that was it. And man, did I enjoy my wife and my son and the time that I had. So we started the mentorship program, and I just started teaching people one-on-one in small groups in the state of Colorado. And we've been doing that for about 4 years now. Had some really good success. And we've got about 45 people in state that are actively flipping, 1 to 5 properties a year. And we decided we wanted to scale that nationally. So we spent about 8-10 months professionally recording, putting everything in a packet, that would really benefit people nationally. We've got 36 different tools in there, between our flip analysis and Gantt charts and contracts for general contractors, and tips and tools to negotiate and raise private money and all those things. And then we've got everything recorded in a format that can go out nationally. So one, yeah, it's a scaling mechanism for us to where I don't have to be one-on-one teaching people. And if we can reach a broad national audience, this is a $5,000 product nationally, and it's a $10,000 product when we're talking about live coaching. So if we can scale that, that's going to be another great revenue source for us. Oh, by the way, it'll help sell wholesale deals. Oh, by the way, it's going to make a really big difference in a lot of people's lives. And so we're actively marketing that nationally now. Product is done, tools are in place, and we're really just starting to throw some marketing dollars behind it.
So when you say product is done, it's essentially like an online course that anyone can replicate in anywhere in the US?
Correct. Yeah. So we've got 3 tiers. We've got a starter kit, which is focused on these individuals learning just the basics and getting the basic tools. That is online. It's about 4 hours worth of content, and you get our top 3 or 4 tools. Then we have our flagship, like bread and butter product, the Better Blueprint Method, which is 24 hours of recorded content, online, accessible via our portal. We have a whole community set up with fix and flippers and our affiliates, our attorneys and our contractors and our hard money lenders and our insurance guys, and everybody's in this community as well as the other students. So everybody can learn and motivate from each other and kind of work off of that. But yeah, you can log in, start learning today. You can self-pace. It's for people that want to learn it in a much quicker period of time, like 30 days or so. And then then we have our fast track coaching, which is $10,000. And that is live via Zoom for 13 weeks worth of content. And that's focused specifically on scaling. So starter kit is cosmetic flips, 30, 40, 50, 60 grand, 60 grand in 6 weeks. Flagship product is now how do we learn how to do 6-figure net profit flips, bigger scopes, other risks to manage, more tools, better professionalism built in, design, all this other stuff. And then fast track coaching is how do we teach you to scale and remove the bottlenecks and the risk on all these phases to be like a 7-figure earner rather than just do 1 or 3 projects at a time. How do you do 5 or 7 projects at a time?
You said live Zoom. Is that you teaching, or you have instructors?
Right now it's me. You get me one-on-one live or in a group of 20 or less. We really try to limit that. We do 1 a quarter basically. And so we'll run four of those cycles a year. And we just do that because we want to really pour into these people. And specifically for the people that are in state in Colorado, like we handhold, like we help them. We teach them through the entire process, but then we help them find their first deal. We help get them contractors and contractor referrals. We'll walk through the home and help them with the design and the layout. We'll help them with the analysis. We'll help them with the project management when they need us to step in. And then we'll help them sell the property. And so we're very, very, very hands-on from that perspective. I can't do that nationally because, everybody's market's different. We're not licensed in these other states. And I don't have contractors nationwide to refer, but our referral network's getting bigger and bigger every day. And we have people in Alabama and North Carolina and Indiana going through the program. And so, that is something that I think will be a potential opportunity in the future.
It's interesting the way you thought about solving this problem. I would have solved it differently, and tell me your thoughts. So I would have gone deeper in Colorado and tried to scale more in person, because then you can charge more. Because right now you're going national, but the risk there is that people might not connect better because they're like, well, you're doing deals in Colorado, I live in Maine, and my market is much different. the costs are much higher or whatever. How did you make that decision of going nationally as opposed to just becoming the market leader in Colorado?
We can do both is my answer, which is usually my answer, which maybe is not always the right answer. Sometimes less is more. But the thought was the recorded national version of the product is more passive because it's
Mm,
like they can self-pace. They're going online. They're doing it themselves, right? There's no access to me needed. They will be on live monthly coaching calls, which limits, and I'll still be doing those coaching calls once a month, but it limits my one-on-one required involvement. So there was a limiting factor on the scaling ability was me and my time, right?
mm,
We still do it, and we're still expanding in the state of Colorado. We're now partnering with larger communities around the state, Facebook groups that have 40,000 members and whatnot. And we're doing live 90-minute in-person trainings to give some value and really teach people the basics, but also as a primer to sell for the in-person version of the course. But yeah, I think the thought behind the national side of it is that it would be a little bit more of a passive earning mechanism.
mm. Because usually from our experience, we tried similar selling land coaching and we built out a course. The problem that we found was that it's the courses become outdated really quickly as the tools and the market and technology changes. Like you see AI coming in and it's like completely outdated some of the tools we were using. So that's the problem we ran into. And then you have to like continuously re-record and keep the material up to date, which becomes very non-passive. Exactly the opposite of the problem you're trying to solve. So that's why we're leaning now. Like I do mentorship as well, and I'm leaning very heavily on one-on-ones or like group one-on-ones on the Zoom, but very focused. Limited students, you charge more, but
Yep.
then they get a ton more value.
Well, and,
But
and like you're also stating, like in state, you have so much more credibility and ability
right,
to perform at a high level because you're a market expert in that area, right? Like you
yeah,
know it very
exactly.
well. The referrals can come in a lot better because you have a lot of mutual connections in that space. So there's a
Yeah.
huge advantage to focusing local on that.
Yeah. It's just that it also might dilute your focus, right? Because now you're trying to work on the national marketing and the national product, but then you also have this demand of local. And are you still taking on like one-on-one clients or did you stop that?
Yeah, we are doing one-on-ones in quotes, right? Where it's small groups, right? So that's where the 20 or less, comes in, where we're trying to keep it to where we have very high quality conversations. People can ask a lot of in-depth questions and those sorts of things, right?
Hmm.
So it's we're still doing it in the small group environment, absolutely. And to your point too, when you go into a national audience right now, locally there's zero marketing dollars that go into this. I can create events, host events, have referrals come in, talk to people that I know, post in investor-based Facebook groups, and I can generate the business almost, from a very, very low cost perspective. But nationally, now we're talking about paid media on a national scale. You might be talking $10,000-$20,000 a month to try to
Yeah.
push that project.
Yeah.
A lot more overhead cost and risk there.
Yeah. The way I would do it is like become the market leader in Colorado, start paid ads because then there'll be even more. The CAC, cost to acquire customer, will be much cheaper because people will look at your free content and your existing track record as well. Then go into adjacent states, right? Because then you're like, oh, well, Colorado is right next to me. So, I can just travel kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you can make money on national level as well. It's just that it's going to be more expensive and it might take a little bit longer. So right now, are you targeting? You said you're spending like 10,000, 20,000 per month on marketing. Is that mostly online marketing, Facebook, PPC, social media, or any other strategies?
Well, let me clarify. I said you could spend that amount. Yeah, from PPC alone, it's $14,000 a month locally for just the wholesaling business, right? So
Hmm.
when you talk about a national audience for mentorship, like you can spend 10 grand a month, you could spend 100 grand a month. It really is how often do you want to be in front of people and how wide of a net do you want to cast? I think it's probably pretty unwise to cast too large of a net because you'll just be fairly ineffective.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we're kind of in that $20,000 to $30,000 a month ad spend.
Oh wow. Are you seeing what's your CAC to LTV ratio right now?
Yeah, so we're seeing good returns on the wholesale side, but mainly because the wholesale margins are so high. We might spend $800 to acquire a client on the wholesale side, but our average net profits are like $52,000 per deal. Um,
Hmm.
Whereas on the mentorship side, we've tried to lean a lot more on organic creative, and then boosting just the organic creative that does well. Um, into our funnel system so that we can get good leads coming through. But to give you an accurate number would be silly. We're so infantile in that. Like we're 2 months into this process.
Hmm.
That I don't think it would be productive. But yeah, that's kind of where we are on that side, is just trying to create, get a video out per day essentially on the social side, and then see what does well, remix it a bit, and then do you don't have to spend a ton. Maybe we're talking about $500 to $1,500 on those individual videos, and that goes up to 60, 80, 100,000 views. We'll get decent lead flow off of things like that. Really, we've tried to build in the automations through Go High Level to handle those leads well at a very like excellent standard before we just ramp up the marketing to nowhere, you know, um, and not be able to handle that lead flow. So I think we're just trying to deal with smaller pools right now to make sure the automations and the sales process and everything is really dialed in before we scale it out.
Hmm. Any particular channel you're targeting, like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok?
Yeah, we pushed out through LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts.
Hmm.
YouTube Shorts got us almost nowhere. I'm sure we're still, making mistakes there, but something in the algorithm is just not pushing us there. So we strategically kind of nixed that and said, let's focus on these other channels. It seems like TikTok is by far the cheapest cost per view right now, and cost per follow as well. So it's much
Hmm.
easier to amass a following there. Instagram it feels like a very different audience. You cannot be salesy whatsoever on Instagram. It has to be really authentic. And so it's a very different type of video there. But yeah, the main one has been Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Those have been kind of the big ones that we start getting responses out of right now.
Yeah. On our side, we see we focus more on longs and less on shorts because longs get less views, but the people who do watch them, right, you build more of a rapport with them because it's longer form. They're spending more time with you, right? Have you seen anything on longs as well?
No, I think it's a really good point. I think it also alludes to the fact that like you don't need a million views. You need the people that are your target audience to view
Right.
you, right? And
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I found is like we start doing this volume of content, like a legitimate amount of volume, just one a day. Like we're not breaking the internet. And we have people that like buddies from college from 10 years ago that are reaching out to me about potentially flipping properties, and like people in the community locally that are reaching out constantly. And then when I go to these meetups, they're like everybody recognized. So it's like there's so much that it does for you from a credibility standpoint that I never would have thought possible, to be honest with you. And they're not necessarily measurables, right? But
Yeah.
you can see it change the business. But I 1,000% agree with you. I think if we could do long form content and then chop it up into a bunch of short term content and then push all of those methods together, that would be the best. We just don't have the bandwidth for it right
Yeah.
now. Honestly, like that would be a limiting factor. I know, so it's a bad answer, but I think just where we are as a business. If we can get there, and me as the visionary just doing that portion of it,
Mm,
that would be great. We've strategically tried to do more things like this instead, where now we're trying to leverage other people's audiences,
mm,
rather than go out and just create our own necessarily out of thin air. I think these are good complementary, avenues to one another.
Are you using a digital marketing agency or is it all in-house?
Both. We used a digital marketing agency to get started. Liked a lot of the things that they did, struggled with some of these things that they did. And then we kind of decided to pull a lot of it in house. We hired an editor, pretty inexpensive from an hourly perspective, so long as he aligned with our vision really well. So we've got one editor out of the country, based in Pakistan. And then we have an in-house director role and myself basically handling content creation.
Hmm. Okay. So you plan to keep it in-house, right? It's more cost effective.
Plan to keep content creation in-house, and then the paid media, we are going through an outbound service for that. But I think eventually we'll pull that in-house as well.
Hmm. One thing we didn't touch on, I know we covered a lot, but you mentioned your biggest constraint right now, which was hiring C-suite level talent, especially on the sales side. Is that for the mentorship business, or are you talking about someone to oversee all four lines?
No, it's not even for the all four lines. It's for the wholesale business. Like, this is where some of our highest margins are, and where a lot of our company's revenue comes from. And like, having killer salespeople is critical for our business across all avenues, right? Recruiting real estate brokers, having good conversations with the students and the mentees that come in through the marketing channels, talking to sellers and getting off market properties directly from sellers. Like, all of these things require A plus salespeople. And the difference between a B minus or a C plus salesperson and an A salesperson is $1 million in revenue for the business per employee. So like
Mhm.
that, and that's a culture thing too. If you get three meh salespeople and you're having to chase your tail training these people constantly and they're not getting it, or they're not taking the initiative and they're not performing, like, that drags the culture down on the business too, of like, well, does this really work? And yeah, the
Mhm.
answer is it does. Like, we had an employee join us from a wholesale side who made $130,000 in his first 3 months with us, like, take home to him. Right. That was amazing. I loved watching that happen for him. But then you have other people that struggle to get the sales part down. Um, and then it eventually doesn't work out with that person. So I think hiring great sales managers to constantly be driving that portion, like A plus CRM management, A plus automation management in the CRM, and A plus sales personnel management and training, like that role right there, that'll change your business.
Mhm.
That'll double your income right there. So I think finding A plus salespeople, because it translates to any portion of our business, and then finding the individual to manage them to where it's not taking 70 hours of my time a week is a whole nother challenge.
Hmm. And how many people are in the sales team right now?
We have 8.
Eight
Yeah.
people. And actually, I didn't ask you how big is like the total organization? How many people total?
Yeah, let me rephrase. We have 8 people in the organization. Everybody is hired or structured as a 1099. Even our COO is a 1099. We've taken very strategically, like, the approach of the lean entrepreneur, and we've been able to build a very high margin business with very low overhead for the most part. And everything is usually like, it's all commission based
Hmm.
activities outside of our VA, outside of our listing coordinator, and outside of our COO. Like, those are the 3 that are non commission based roles.
Right. So you have like two people in sales right now?
So we've got 5 people in sales and we've got 3 non commission revenue employees.
I see. So so you're saying the biggest constraint is to finding a C-level sales, like a director who these 5 people can report to? Is that the challenge?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because that's me currently, which is great. Like that's the DNA of our company is sales. Um, but I think it limits the ability of the company to scale in these other avenues because we're not working. I'm not working on the business. That's not true. I'm getting up and I'm starting work at 5 a.m. every day. So
Mhm.
I start at 5 a.m. and I work until 8 because those are the only 3 hours of the day that I am free to work on creative business building activities rather than, you know how it is. The second the day starts, you're interrupted with 20 million things to
Right.
work on behalf of your employees so that they can be successful. And so, yes, I think finding a C-suite individual with, 10 years of sales experience that has who we would say is like, hey, this is the person that embodies the ability to overcome objections, train salespeople, and have the technical ability to do the automations and the sales knowledge of a systems in our CRM. Like that role is challenging to find.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's going to be challenging. It's also going to be very expensive to find someone, right? Because they'll expect top dollar. The way we tackled it internally is just to find like people. I mean, our business is not as sales heavy. I mean, it is sales heavy, but it's not as uh like from a revenue perspective, it's not as important. But the way we tackled is like we hire people right out of college and we train them in house. So
Mhm.
we acquire talent for relatively inexpensive costs, but then we put a lot of in-house training and try to make them superstars in-house. That way it's much cheaper, and also then people tend to stay longer, right? Because they started with your company and they know your culture, and it's painful to switch, and then you start paying them more, so they're a little bit above the market, right? So that strategy worked for us, but the only challenge is that you have to spend a lot of time and energy bringing them up to speed for the first like 3 months or so.
Yeah, which I think works when you've got a stockpile of funds sitting on the side, meaning like whether you've raised money or whether you've delayed the growth long enough to have enough cash to sit around for a period of time and like really take the 6 months that it takes to train these people to start really being successful. Um, our industry is an industry of turnover too, right?
Yeah.
We've been very lucky to retain most of our individuals for probably longer than average, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge from like a culture perspective, from a knowledge perspective. And then once they start seeing success, um, is your is your pay plan competitive enough for people to stay? And we've tried to just make all those no brainers, right?
Yeah.
Yes, your commission, but the second you start putting it together, you're going to get paid more here than anywhere else, um,
Yeah.
based on that success.
Yeah. Jason, this has been a great conversation. If thanks for spending time with us today. And if anyone is watching this and they're like, well, I want to do wholesale deals with Jason, or I want to join his mentorship, or I want to be invest in his company, or do fix and flips, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, I think right now is just going to betterblueprintrealty.com, or you can just email me directly at jason@betterblueprintrealty.com. And then there's betterblueprintacademy.com as well.
Jason, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.